Good morning and welcome to Mayor's Weekly. I think I mentioned last week and I'll mention again, I hope you're enjoying the beautiful fall weather we're having. I just looked at a long-range forecast, and for the southern part of the United States, is that our winter will be warmer than normal and drier than normal. So maybe that means we don't have to get the snow plows out and that sort of thing. But anyway, we enjoy the pretty weather as long as we can. Joining me today is our City Clerk, Chief Financial Officer, Kathy Chambliss, and I asked Kathy to join me and to talk for a few minutes this morning about what I'll generally categorize as municipal authority, and most people do not have an opportunity or reason to understand the basis of municipal authority. And so that's not their fault. So we thought we'd talk about that a little bit. Municipal authority stems from the state legislature, and you couldn't go out and start a new municipality, whatever, and write your own rule book. The fact that authority is granted by the state legislature, the Code of Alabama sets out the rules of what you can do, can't do, and it sets out different classes for cities and those classes are determined by population. And those different classes, the structure is a little different. What the mayor can do, can't do, that sort of thing. And so some people think that the mayor has a lot of authority. Some people think that the mayor has no authority, and both of those assumptions are wrong. And but Ms. Chambliss, if you would, you've been doing this for a long time, 30 plus years, and probably have a better familiarity of this subject than anybody in this city. Talk about that a little bit, and then we'll talk about a little more detail about hiring authority and some of those things.
Okay, well, you mentioned classes of cities. So in Alabama, there's 8 classes of cities, and based upon your population, like you mentioned, and it goes back to the 1970 population. So Jasper is a class 7, but so a city like Birmingham is like a class 1 city. A class 2 city.
The higher the population, the lower your class number.
That's right. So the smaller cities around us would be class 8 cities. And Alabama state law oftentimes will make a law that is specific to a class of a city, or it may include all cities, such as like the bid law, for example. The bid law would be the same law for every class of city, but there could be some laws that are just specific to a city. For example, maybe an election law that would only apply to the city of Birmingham. So there's distinctions within those classes, like you mentioned.
Well, Kathy, I think I know this, and if I'm in error, please correct me. But when you, like, I think if you class 6 or below that, whatever, if you come to this city looking for an appropriation of money or rolling out a policy or whatever, the mayor has no vote in that. But the smaller cities, it's my understanding the mayor votes with the council. Is that correct?
That's correct. In populations below 12,000, the mayor sits with the council and has a vote just like any council member does. And we had that when I was first hired here. We had a mayor that sat with the council. So in the early 90s, the best I can remember, the city did reach, it was probably the 1990 census, where the city did exceed 12,000 in population. And then the city's mayor no longer sit with the council, and he, at that point, did have say in an ordinance whether or not, because he had veto power.
Right.
But he still no longer had that vote on that particular ordinance that might be coming before them.
Now, you touched on something, veto power, and the council, in the case of Jasper, my being mayor, I have veto power. Now, by a majority vote, the council can override my veto. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But, and so what might pop into your mind is this: well, why would you go to the trouble of vetoing? They'll just simply override your veto and move on. The value in the veto is this: is it brings light to the subject, whether it needs it or not. It takes it high profile if the mayor does veto it, and so the council members have to be pretty solid in their position. If they're off the mark, then they could draw a great deal of scrutiny and criticism. Did you see that as the value of the veto?
Well, for sure, and our mayor is elected by all the population of the city, where a council member, his district residents vote for him. So that ability to come before the council with an opinion that you're getting maybe from all over Jasper,
right,
certainly has some strength.
Kathy, let's move to Jasper, and let's talk about the authority of the mayor, authority of the council, and then I want us to touch on some of the boards and where we appoint board members and that sort of thing. Now, I said, I whoever is the sitting mayor has no input, cannot appropriate money. The only money that can be spent by the mayor has to be approved by the council. And that's
correct.
And but put generally, the council promulgates ordinances, rules, that sort of thing. But the mayor has full authority for the day-to-day administration of the city.
That's correct, and the mayor is the supervisor or the head of all employees that work for the city.
So and that's absolute. Civil Service Board, they don't work for the Civil Service Board. They don't work for the council members. As I understand it, that I have to pass on any hiring, and it's my call for any termination. A department head couldn't terminate an employee. The mayor has to authorize a termination. Is that correct?
That's correct. The police chief and the fire chief and the city clerk, the council has set them a little bit differently. Well, state law actually provides for them to be a little bit different. So, but all the other employees are strictly a selection by yourself.
Okay, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because we know that our fire chief has told us that his plans are to retire in the early part of 2021, and I've had some calls of people expressing an interest for this person, that person being the fire chief, and some of them have looked at me with a little bit of a skeptical look when I tell them that's not my call. But I mean, I've told them the truth. Is that right?
That is the truth. In 2010, the Jasper City Council provided an ordinance by which they would have a certain procedure for the police chief and the fire chief, and they will actually interview for those positions. A test will be given by the Civil Service Board for those positions, but the top three will be interviewed by the Jasper City Council and yourself, because you have one vote on that position. But each council member will cast their vote for who they believe is the best and most qualified for the position, and yourself. If there is a tie, then you cast the final vote.
Yeah. Well, let's just do a hypothetical based on what you just shared, Kathy. If I don't think it would ever happen. But let's just say we had a wayward police chief that was underperforming or doing things unbecoming, being police chief of the city. How would that sort of thing be handled? And you and I have had some discussions along this line, so I'm not traveling in the
No.
dark, but I think it's good to touch on that.
Well, once they're hired, they work for you. And so it's my opinion that the mayor could remove someone. It might be that the council would have to vote to approve that removal. And I don't think that ordinance actually lays that out,
Right.
that particular procedure. But I still think that once hired, they work for you. And should they not be doing the job that you believe they should be doing, then they can be removed. And it might take a 2/3 vote of the council to uphold that.
Okay. Now, there's some other positions that we talk about. Jasper being a class 7 city, I believe, or is that right?
It is. Jasper's a class 7.
7, right. We thinking about our hiring and that sort of thing. We have a city attorney. Now, and the Alabama League of Municipalities is a great resource as we have questions, and believe me, with 30 years experience, you can still have questions, you can have unusual situations, and they're good to help us. Our city attorney is, if it is an appointment, I believe right, that I could make an appointment, but if it's by contract, the council hires them. Is that correct? So in our case, it's by contract, so our city attorney is hired by the city council, not by the mayor.
Because the council gives you permission to enter into any contract.
Right, right. Now, I think Ms. Shamus and I had a discussion about this the other day. I was reading that the mayor in Pelham, which is a larger city than Jasper, the mayor had appointed a fire chief, and what can happen, as you shared with me, is the council could delegate their authority to the mayor to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct. The city clerk, by state statute, is an appointment of the council. And so are the fire chief and the police chief, but they can delegate down the police chief and the fire chief to be hired by the mayor.
Okay. So that was a little confusing to me as how, and Ms. Sham shared with me that in all likelihood the council in Pelham had delegated that authority to the mayor and made that work. Now, there's numerous boards across this city that the city government has a connection with, and that connection is that the city council, some boards are appointed by the mayor, some are by the council, but we don't control those operating entities. Case in point, Jasper City School System. It's normal for a person to think Jasper City School System, well, Jasper must run the school system. That's not true. They stand alone. They have full autonomy to run their operation. But the Jasper City Council appoints those board members, and there's a board member that serves from each council district. And I think heretofore, the council members have tried to support the recommendation of that specific council member.
That is correct, and they set up an ordinance to appoint board members by council district. That's not provided for by Alabama state law. That was a local ordinance that.
Right. And you touched on something there. What we know, what's contained in the Code of Alabama, we, as a municipal, we can't alter that in any way. That's, everything we have to do has to be in compliance with that. Now, Jasper Water Works and Sewer Board, be natural for folks, it is natural for folks to think, well, City of Jasper runs that. I get calls from time to time, well-intentioned folks, thinking that we run the Jasper Water Works and Sewer Board. Again, a freestanding entity with full autonomy to run their operation, but their board members, just like the school board, we have one from each council district, I believe, don't we?
We do.
And we appoint those.
And, you know, the number of board members would be set up by Alabama state law, how
Yeah.
many board members you can have for that particular type board.
But, you know, I think about something that popped into my mind. If you, one of the smaller cities or whatever, where the mayor sits with the council or whatever, or if you didn't have enough council districts, the mayor, you could have yourself in a position of gridlock if you had an even number with a mayor. And I guess that exists.
I'm sure that it does.
Yeah, and because your preference is to have an odd number, so you wouldn't have gridlock. But we have a board of zoning adjustment, and you tell, but I believe all of those folks are appointed by the mayor. Is that right? And we talked about the City Board of Education, the Housing Authority. Those members are appointed by the mayor. Industrial Development Board, I believe, well, it's like what we see with the Supreme Court nominee. I think the mayor appoints subject to council confirmation. Is that correct? The library board, is that the mayor's appointment, or do you know? Not sure.
I'm not sure, but I think that may be council.
Council approval. Talked about the water board, the medical clinic board. I believe that's the mayor's appointment.
It is.
And pleased to have had the opportunity to appoint Dr. Autry just last year to that board. A great add. The planning board appointed by the mayor, and so the municipal government reaches out, has a connection, and certainly by the power of appointment can have influence on those boards, but by no means do we step out and try to run their organizations, their operations, that sort of thing. And but I felt like that it was might be good to touch on some of those things, and if you have questions, let us know. But again, I think it's important to understand there's some authorities that the mayor does not have. There's some that the mayor does have, and so what that says is it's so important to have a harmonious relationship between your mayor and your council. You know, if you have an adverse relationship, then it really is a stumbling block for running your municipality.
Sure is.
Good. But Ms. James, thank you for joining me this morning. I hope this information is helpful. A lot of information. If you have questions, let us know. We'll get you answers. But this is something we probably ought to do every year, just as a refresher, and help people understand. Because as I mentioned at the outset of this session, people don't have an opportunity to learn these things, and so hopefully you find this beneficial, and glad to have you with us, and we'll look forward to being with you next week.